Hey everyone, you beautiful people. Welcome to the Lindstrom Report. I'm a branding guy. I'm creating new names. So I'm Martin Lindstrom, Lindstrom Report. I know it's not original. I apologize for that, but it was the best I could come up with. Listen, I'm so excited to have you on my show today because what I'm going to take you through is all about gratitude. May sound a bit boring. It's not, I guarantee you. And in fact, the reason why I want to tell you about this story, which I'm going to do right now, is because it's all about gratitude. So let me just tell this example from an above and beyond customer service I encountered in Dubai. Now, I was with a colleague supposing to depart from this very airport. Now, an hour and a half before our flight left, we checked in at Emirates Airlines in Dubai International Airport, or rather, we tried to. You must be some kind of Olympic athlete. The mask guy, I want to add, in ticketing, it was saying to me and explaining that the flight was actually scheduled to leave from another terminal. Now, in most airports, as you know, you would be just boarding a bus or a plane or a train or something like that, and 10 minutes later, you would be on your way to the gate. But this was slightly different because the second Emirates terminal was so far away that in fact I had to find a taxi, and if I found a taxi, it probably would be almost an hour late. So I wouldn't reach my gate until the plane was on the runway, and that's where I had the problems. Now, we were about to give up, I have to say, and accept the fact that we missed our flight. Angry client, everyone was horrible, of course. Then something impossible is happening. The agent then proposes another idea. If I ran, and I mean seriously, if I ran, this would succeed. So here we go. We are now going on this major journey on trying to run. And this is the story. If we run along the network of back landings, going through the passengers in and out and the securities, in fact, we would reach the gate in around 45 minutes, he said. I mean, he must have seen the expression in my face when I didn't know what to say, if he was kidding or if this was real. So he then said, you know what? It's my lunch break. I'll run with you. So here we go. This cool guy is now changing his shoes from these public shoes, right? Public shoes meaning the Emirates shoes, right? And then he literally went out on the floor and we started to run. Armed with our, trusty luggage trolley, the three of us jogged up and down the stairways along deserted corridors and dodging in and out of a half a dozen of security ticks. Whenever there was a hold up or something going on, then I tell you, this agent flashed his secret card and he stretched the truth a little bit, I have to say. But in the end of the day, he just waved through the whole thing. And 45 minutes later, out of breath, we reached the Emirates gate. And we deserved a gold medal. I was completely exhausted. Now, ask yourself, why would anyone do what this guy from the Emirates was doing? And actually, I do think the truth is very simple. He or she or anyone would do it because of empathy. He was treating me as he would wish to be treated if he were in our situation. From a common sense standpoint, he was ensuring my loyalty to the airline for the rest of my life. This is just another take of the golden rule, of which one variation or another dates back to, 500 before Christ. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Or in its more negative form, do not treat others in ways you would not like to be treated yourself. Now, if there's one person, just one person on the planet Earth with 7.5 billion people I can think of who have mastered the very concept of gratitude, I think this would be the guy.
See, the people that work with and for you, you don't know what they just came from. Bad news, trouble with a child. Here's what you do know. The time they spend with you, they can believe what they did mattered. They made a difference. And when they did, you noticed it and you celebrated it. So if you're a teacher, if you're a coach, if you get to speak in these big venues, this is the moment you kind of live for. Because at some point, hundreds of people are going to come through that door. And they're going to want to learn how to be better leaders, better teammates, better people. And it's my job to give them case studies and to give them tools to do that. Now, where it gets really fun is, and you can pick them out, you always have the skeptics. You know, the guys that come in and you can just see it on their faces. They would rather be anywhere, but their boss made them come, right? And they sit down and they're working on their phones and their emails, and then they start to listen. And then maybe something piques their interest. And then they lean forward. And then they start to engage. And maybe even they wait for it too. And they get it. And that's the moment as a teacher. You just love it.
Chester, one of the world's great thinkers in the area of leadership, culture, recognized by global gurus as one of the top in the world. Also, 1.5 million books sold, 5 New York Times bestsellers.
If you want to attract top talent, and you want to retain that top talent, you have to have a ratio that's positive. And there is nothing that creates a positive workplace more than the simple act of gratitude. Random acts of kindness. So anyway, I'm excited. I love to teach. I love to share with people how you can create those cultures where people believe what they do matters, they make a difference. And when they make a difference, it's noticed and celebrated. Because you know what? At the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy. Everyone wants to have a great job. Everyone wants to go home and share all that wonderful goodness from work with their families. So whoever's sitting at this table, when those people come through, my job is to make sure they leave with more than they came in with, and that I've made a difference for them.
Now quoted as one of the most influential voices of the trend of workplace trends, Chester Elton. You've been 2 decades helping clients engage their employees and executives on strategy and vision and all this stuff. And I have to say, Chester, just hold yourself in front of your ears right now, because this will make you blush. But Chester is one of the most amazing people I have met for, a very, very long time. He may look a bit flaky on that video, a little bit too polished, a little bit too Hollywood-like. Does this person exist? He does. He actually exists, which is amazing. Now, I just want to say about Chester, before I say officially welcome, Chester's work is supported by research with more than 850,000 working adults, revealing the proven secrets behind high-performance cultures and teams. And by the way, Chester's also been busy. He's the co-author of multiple award-winning New York Times and #1 USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling leadership book. You may recognize them. One of them is called, as I recall, All In. You have the Carrot Principles, and you have The Best Team Wins. And then you have a book, which we will talk a little bit about now in a second. Now, before we talk about that, his book has been translated to more than 30 languages and sold more than 1.5 million copies worldwide. Chester, welcome.
Well, that's the most incredible interview or introduction I have ever had, Martin. So thank you. You're gracious. And, all those things you say about I'm a nice guy and a good person, 10 times back to you. You and I had the chance to spend some time together. Yeah. And let me just say, I am grateful for your genius and for your counseling. More than all of that, I'm grateful for our friendship. So thanks for having me on your show today.
Thank you. Thank you, Chester. Listen, to all of you guys watching out there, and I just want to say hello to a couple of amazing individuals. We have Anna from Colombia, Stefan, Joshua from the West Coast, Julie from Toronto, Violetta from Mexico, and we have Donna from Toronto. Listen, if you have any questions, this is a moment for you to ask this amazing person today. Also, can you just write down where you're from? I'm so curious to figure out where you're from, and because that gives me a sense of who we are talking with today. Now, Chester, I have to ask you, this video is all about you jumping on stage having an amazing life in front of an amazing audience, and from one day to another, the plug was pulled away, right? So I have to ask you, do you sit at home shaking that you feel that you've lost something? That, oh, why are these people? Do you hang posters with people around you to keep up the energy? What do you do?
It is so interesting. I love that you played that video. As you know, I grew up in Canada, and we shot that video up on Whistler in British Columbia. I grew up in Vancouver, and so that brings back great memories. Yeah, to say that I don't miss it would not be true. I do. I miss it terribly. Being on stage is so much fun, and what I love most about that was coming off the stage and getting to talk to people afterwards, and getting to hear their stories. And sometimes you'd have a book signing or something like that. And so I have missed it. I will tell you, though, my co-author, Adrian Angostic, and we've made a wonderful pivot to digital. And we get to present to audiences now all over the world without having to get on a plane and run down the corridor with the Emirates check-in guy. And so I don't miss, because travel wears you out, as you well know. It does. And yet it's part of the excitement. So yeah, I'm conflicted. I enjoy presenting from my home office. I enjoy being able to present in 5 different countries in one day, which you'd never be able to do live. And yet you're right. I miss the human contact. As I was watching that video and we're hugging and we're kissing, and I thought, I miss that. I really do. I miss that.
Now, listen, Chester, I'm going to tell a secret here, and don't tell anyone, right? But I actually have installed a TSA security scanner in the entrance into my bedroom where I'm sitting right now, ensuring that I get this beep beep feel. I get all the harassment. I get this anxiety feeling. I get that sort of buzz before I'm taking off. Have you done something similar? Is it just me?
You know what? That's just you, Martin.
Okay. I'm just kidding. Listen, I just have to ask, you were lying. I noticed you were lying because you said you get the biggest buzz when you leave States. I've heard a story about that you actually get the biggest buzz when you're breaking rules and throwing frisbees at people. Is that true?
Yeah, I had a great experience. My heritage is from England, and so I used to go to the UK fairly frequently. And the biggest audience I ever presented to was Tesco. It was the Tesco leaders. It was Birmingham, England, and it was in this arena. It was 10,000 people. It was amazing. It was this, stage in the middle with the big screens all around, and I'd worked with some of the leaders that had come to Tesco at different places, at Pets at Home and at Halfords. And so it was really interesting. They brought me in. They said, "This is our biggest gathering, and we want you to talk about gratitude and the carrot and the whole bit." Well, one of the reasons they brought me in is because I like to engage with the audience. We have our little Garrett the Carrot mascot, and if you answer the question or name that tune, we throw you a carrot, and people enjoy that. And then if the guys are in the back of the hall, we bring the frisbees, right? So you can only throw a carrot so far. Well, the organizer of the conference, and by the way, they flew me in, and I met the warehouse workers and the smaller Tesco to the big box Tesco, and really did our homework and went through the slides, numerous times. A couple of things he said. First off, I know orange is your color. Our number one competitor is orange. You can't wear orange, which made me almost invisible to myself because I was wearing blue, and I don't recognize myself in blue. The second thing he said, though, was really hurt my heart. He says, and you can't throw frisbees and you can't throw carrots, and I don't want you talking to people in the audience. And I said, one of the reasons your boss has brought me in is because it's fun. He said, yeah, no, love the message. Just, you can't do that. Well, I brought all the stuff anyway, right? And I thought, I know what he's saying. And I met with the producer, Charlie, and he was great. And I said, Charlie, you got to help me out here. And I tell him this story. And he says, don't worry about it. Bring your stuff. Go crazy. Be you. And I said, well, how are you going to sell it? He said, I'm going to tell him, let the man have his guitar, which I thought was a great expression. I said, what do you mean by that? He says, well, you wouldn't invite Bruce Springsteen to perform and say, oh, by the way, Bruce, you got to sing a cappella, bring your guitar. So anyway, so they were all nervous. And I said, look, I'm going to do it. He said, okay, but, be careful. I mean, health and safety, the Frisbees, they're hard. I said, look, just trust me on this. I've done it 1,000 times. Well, I start throwing carrots and I'm talking to people. And then I call up to the guys in the upper balcony and I said, I know what you guys are thinking. There's no way he can throw a carrot that far. That's why we bring the Frisbees. And I launched this Frisbee, Martin, and it was majestic. It was this orange Frisbee just sailing into the night, up to the guy catches it. Place goes crazy. And I looked down at my buddy in the front row, and afterwards he said, Chester, I was so worried. Don't you know, I was so worried. When you threw that Frisbee and I saw it in the air, I said to myself, that's brilliant. And I said, I told you so. I told you it would work. It was. This is
Goosebumps. Goosebumps, where it comes from. Do you know where Goosebumps come from?
No.
It comes from supposedly when we were monkeys some hundreds and thousands of years ago, and when we would start to look scary in order to scare the enemy away, the hairs will raise and we will look more sort of scary towards everyone else. And what's so amazing is that Goosebumps is really bypassing all filters in our brain. We can't control it. And I always say to myself, when you're a really good speaker, when you're really good at writing, or you're creating an amazing movie, if it gives you goosebumps, you have achieved your goal. And that's exactly what I got when I heard your story. Well done, right? See, now, guys, now you can see why I'm saying that this guy is a genius, right? Now, I just want to ask him one question now, right? And before I do that, Chester, I want to take you back in time. In fact, 8 years back in time, and just share this little video with you.
So, I'm on a typical business trip. I'm running between gates at Dulles Airport trying to make a connection. I got my wheelie behind me. I got my cell phone to my ear, my backpack on my shoulder. Anyway, I'm talking to my president and CEO, Kent Murdoch. We're talking about this, that, and the other thing. I finally shut off the phone, looking for the gate where I'm supposed to go, when my phone immediately rings again. This time it's my wife. That's the phone call you take no matter who you're talking to or where you are. She says, hey, Chess, you're not going to believe what just happened. A guy delivered 24 beautiful orange roses to our door. At first, I thought they were from you. Of course, I knew they weren't and became very curious as to who they were from. She said, they're from your boss, Kent Murdoch, your CEO. 24 beautiful orange roses. Isn't that sweet? And the little card said, Heidi, a little something for you for all the little things you do at home so Chester can do big things for us on the road. How great is that? How do you think that made my wife feel about the work I do? How do you think it made me feel about my boss and what he does for me and my family? But here's the kicker. As we're wrapping up the conversation, she says, where are you? I said, well, honey, I'm running to catch a gate, so I can make my connection. She said, well, don't you dare miss that flight. Those are good people you're working for. See, a little bit of appreciation. It just flat out works.
You see that COVID was around already back then, right? I mean, there was not a single person in the audience, and that's 8 years ago.
Oh, boy, and I missed that goatee. I think I look way cooler with a goatee. Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything here, okay? Tell me, how do you show gratitude when we're all stuck behind these screens? How do you show empathy? Now, I mean, it seems to be almost impossible, right?
It's not. I think in a lot of ways it's easier. Simply because you can call people up on a Zoom call, you can phone people, you can text. I'm kind of old school. You know what I love to do, Martin? I love writing handwritten notes. I know it's old school. I will tell you though that your mail's not that interesting anymore, and you write a handwritten note or a letter. It's so funny. I keep a journal. I just had it out, and I was writing it this morning. In the back, I noticed there was a little something. And this was a letter from my brother Tanner, in his messy handwriting, a little fountain pen. And he just said, hey, I just want to let you know I love you and how much I appreciate you and how much I miss you. Looking forward to getting together. But, between now and then, just know your big brother's cheering for you. And it's a treasure. I mean, I put it in my journal. I've got, as you might guess, I've got thank you notes. I keep them right here. Orange envelope, of course. And, it's a little card that says gratitude attracts gratitude. And I wrote a note this morning and mailed it off to a guy. And you know what I love about this kind of connection, Martin, is people take the time. It's always
Mm,
timely
mm, mm.
because now it's quiet. It's an uninterrupted conversation. It's not a text that interrupts what you're doing or I'll get to it later. You sit down and you read, and those little things. I'll tell you what else. And I just found this the other day. With COVID and everything. Did you know there's COVID? There's a pandemic. Did you know about that? Anyway, a friend of mine, our family got it. Now we didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. It was really bad. We were laid up. We got better. Well, a friend of mine sent us a care package with chicken soup in it. I mean, Martin, seriously, how great is that? It had the rolls, it had the ladle, some little messages. Well, I immediately looked up the company. A friend of mine was in Austin, Texas. They had that big storm. They lost all their power. As soon as we sent them down, things like that, these I call them random acts of kindness, are spectacular. A little gift basket, chicken soup, a little card, a little text. And the message is always, hey, I was just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Want to let you know how much I love you. I'm cheering for you.
It happens. Now, I mean, I spoke to a mutual friend of ours, Mark Thompson, which is a part of the MG 100, Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Club, right? And his daughter, and I sent a little bit of a message to her online, and she wrote a handwritten card to me. And Mark, he told me, I hope, Vanessa, don't kill your dad now if you watch this, right? No, her dad told me that Vanessa, when she wrote this card, she said, will this card really go the whole way around the world to Martin? Because he's never supposedly written a handwritten card before. And I remember the impact when I received this card, because it's so rare you do it. I tend to say that if everyone goes in that direction, you go in that direction, because that's where you really will be noticed, right? Now, I just want to ask one question on behalf of Anna. Anna is from Colombia, and she's asking, how are you grateful, or how do you stay grateful in this cruel world without looking like a fool?
It's a great question. And it is, I think when you wake up in the morning, and so many of us do this, I'm breaking my habit. Thanks to you, by the way, Martin. Our phones go off and we wake up and we immediately do what I call the death scroll. We go to the news feed. Well, if you're, remotely suicidal, do not go to your news feed to thinking it's going to cheer you up, right? And we get this view of the world, that the world is cruel.
Yeah.
And yet there are so many good people out there doing so many good things. They just don't get the press. So, you don't look like a kindness is never foolish. Gratitude is never foolish. It's always welcomed. It's why, as we were designing these cards, we said, well, what do we put on it? And I said, gratitude attracts gratitude.
Yeah.
If you're feeling like you're not being valued, go value someone else.
Yeah. You know what is fascinating what you're saying there, because you're aware of, there was a study conducted, I think it was 8 years ago, where people's happiness level were monitored, and also their popularity was monitored. And what they realized in this study was the most popular kids in school, in fact, are kids which are making other kids laugh. And they couldn't understand why until they started to understand and scan people's brains. And what they realized through this process was that the kids making other kids laugh suddenly were breathing more, and it gave you more energy, more oxygen to your brain. And therefore, people literally are attracted by other kids giving them more oxygen. And I would put this gratitude concept underneath this umbrella, because I do think the more things are negative as it is right now, I think people really are desperate to get some positive news. I think it really does feed off a positive behavior, right?
It does. I love in the chat line, Stefan Kaplan, he says, hashtag be kinder than necessary. I love that. I love that. Just kill them with kindness. And I'll tell you, Martin, you and I have had these conversations often. The biggest impact in my life along this line was my father, John Dalton Elton. Elton, he was bigger than life. He had a big booming bass voice, a wonderful singer. And to your point, people loved being around my dad because he made them laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made them feel so good about themselves. He was very self-deprecating, and I'll tell you a cute story, and this, you'll love this stuff, and it'll be kinder than necessary. So I'll never forget, we're at church one Sunday, and this young guy, as church is over, and this young guy comes up to my dad and he says, "Hey, Brother Elton, could you give me a ride home?" Oh, no, he says, "Brother Elton, could I ask you for a favor?" He said, "Sure." He says, "Could I get a ride home?" He said, "Absolutely, not a problem." He says, "Look, I'm wrapping up some stuff. Meet you at the door in 5 minutes." Well, we meet him at the door in 5 minutes. And the young kid says to my dad, he says, "Brother Elton, I noticed that you live in West Vancouver. I live in North Vancouver. This is going to be out of your way. So I'll find another ride." And my dad looks at me, smiled. He said, "Out of my way? See, that's what makes it a favor. Get in the car."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do know, it reminds me about, from a commercial sense, what I experienced when I was in Japan many years ago. And in fact, I was sitting in one of these sake bar, drinking sake. This sake comes in these huge bottles. And this lady, I think she was between, Japanese lady, she was between 200 and 600 years old, plus minus 100 years, right? She was pouring this sake into this little cup. And it went straight up to the edge of this glass. And then it continued floating over the glass into the wooden cup and straight up to the edge. And I said, "Stop, stop, stop, stop. Why do you do this?" And she said to me in broken English, "Here in Japan, we always over-deliver and under-promise. We always over-deliver and under-promise." And I think that's a little right. Fascinating stuff. Now, listen. I have another question for you, which I would do a little bit of lead in. I was just listening into a conversation you had some time ago, and I want to share this comment you shared with a group of people during an interview. Take a look at this.
You're going to see in the next 10, 15 years, maybe not even that long, a real consolidation. Like the Ivy League schools in Stanford and stuff, that's a brand that, and they've got these billion-dollar endowments, right, that are going to survive. All the players in between. And they made a really interesting statement that they think that in a very short period of time, that degrees, university degrees, are going to be irrelevant because of the speed of business. We're on this exponential, it's Moore's law, right? It's doubling and the price is being cut in half. That you're just going to hire smart people because you're going to have to teach them how to do it anyway. And if you have to wait 4 years for them to show up, well, what you needed 4 years ago and what you need now is going to Even degrees are going to. That's why, again, this idea of a learning organization, it's got to be a part of, whether you are a startup or you are a mid-size or you are a big company, you have to be engaged in continual education.
I love the fact that it's saying Martin Lindstrom underneath you. I'm completely confused about what's going on here. This guy's schizophrenic. This is fascinating. Is that really the case, do you think?
I do. I think it's going to get to that point. 4 years in university, it's like you're in a holding pen. And I get that, there's a maturity there and maybe you want to sample different things. And listen, I'm a big fan of education. I've always thought that travel was a great educator. I honestly believe that if you're going to go get a degree, that, make sure that you're doing some study abroad, learn another language, live in another culture, and so on. I really do think that there are some basics that you're going to get in university and college. And yet, when you went and got your first jobs and whatnot, there was probably some stuff you learned in university that was helpful. But boy, they had to teach you, the company culture, how to get things done. Here are the needs of the clients. Here's our product and our services. And it was a complete re-education. So I honestly think that the bar for whether I'm going to hire you or not is, are you smart? Are you willing to learn? Can you get along with people? It's really interesting. There's a lot of books written about, the no asshole rule, right? So what do Marshall Goldsmith, he's got that rule. He goes, look, MG100, we don't let jerks in, because life is too short. So we want smart, engaging people that get along with people. And Martin, we've never met a great leader or studied a great culture or a high performance team where they didn't have that thread of gratitude.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a really interesting story. We wrote this up in our book, The Best Team Wins. And it was on the International Space Station. So it was really interesting. There were 3 Russian cosmonauts, 2 American astronauts, and the commander was a Canadian. We love the Canadians, right? And he said it was really interesting. They went up there and they had the most productive 5 months ever in NASA. And so they wanted to study what was it about this team that made them so productive. So Chris Hadley was the commander. Chris Hatfield. I knew I'd get that wrong. Chris Hatfield. Met him at a conference, got to know him. He's Canadian. I'm Canadian. We got that hockey thing, And I said, so what was the difference of your team? And he said, well, it's really interesting. To work at NASA, you got to be super smart. He says, we were all super smart. And we trained for 12 years before they went up. Can you imagine? 12 years. And we obeyed all the rules. We knew if anything went wrong, we knew how to fix it. He says, you know what the difference was? Is we had one unwritten rule, and it was this, that every astronaut had to perform one random act of kindness for every other astronaut every day. Now, we didn't keep track of it, and it was simple stuff like, I'll clean the equipment. Let me help you with the calculations. Let me make dinner, and on and on. He says, we got to know each other, and we connected on an emotional level. He said, we even, outside the rules, we said, what would happen if somebody in our family passed away while we were up at the space station? What would we do? Because clearly you can't go back. And in fact, one of the Russian cosmonauts, his dad died unexpectedly. They were prepared. He said, the message of the random act of kindness every day was this: you're on my team. I care about you. I've got your back. You can count on me. And get this, I love you. And he said, because we did that, we never had a heated argument. Nobody ever screamed and yelled. It was all about how can we support each other to get the work done. So isn't it fascinating that, millions of dollars of training, $1 billion worth of equipment, the difference was gratitude.
Yeah, it shows everything. Amazing stuff. And by the way, for all of you guys who are curious to learn more about this topic, just behind Chester, you will see 3 different books, as you noticed. There's a wonderful book. I can't recommend it, though, because I know the author a little bit too well. That's the Minister of Common Sense, if you get what I mean. And then we have 2 other books. One book has never, ever been discussed before, which is Chester's soon-to-be-released book. I think it's in May, right? That's Anxiety at Work, which, actually, Chester, you have a podcast on this topic as well, right?
We do. We drop it every Friday, and we've had some wonderful guests, you being one of them. How do you deal with anxiety at work? It is the #1 issue in the workplace. We're very proud of this work. Not only do we have the Anxiety at Work podcast, join us at wethrivetogether.global. Wethrivetogether.global. It's a free community online, and it's a safe place to talk about wellness in the workplace and anxiety. And of course, what we've been talking about today is leading with gratitude. And people say, wait a minute, you wrote a book on gratitude and then you wrote a book on anxiety. How does that work? And what we found, and you know this, Martin, you can't be in a state of gratitude and be anxious at the same time.
No.
A lot of anxiety practices are keep a gratitude journal, reach out and care for someone else. And so thank you for letting me put in the little commercial. I will tell you though,
Of course, it's a gratitude. From you.
I've got 2 books. Anybody can buy one. Buy 2.
Listen, I just want to put this in a context. So one of the theories I have, and I think it's Anna again asking about the correlation between gratitude and common sense and empathy. One of the theories I have is there is a direct correlation between common sense and empathy. Remember, common sense have one word which is common, which means you're seeing the world from multiple point of views. And you have empathy, which is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and experience and feel what that person is feeling. Now, I just want to share a little model with you and then just ask you about your opinion about this. So if you take a look at this model here, you will notice that, in fact, there is should and shouldn't on the bottom. You have do on the left and you have don't on the right. And what we noticed is that a lot of people in the day-to-day work are suffering from don't and shooting down there. That's, by the way, all the routine stuff you're doing, which you're sick and tired of, the frictions. It's what we call nonsense. And the opposite of nonsense is, of course, common sense. Now, one of the things I notice is the bigger a company is, the more nonsense they have. It really has a direct correlation with it. And ironically, entrepreneurial companies, for some reason, when they start up, have much more common sense. It's almost like they're losing that common sense and empathy at the same time, which is really fascinating. Share with me here, Chester, what should bigger companies do when it comes to learning from the smaller companies, entrepreneurial companies, because it almost always seems to be lost in translation, empathy and common sense.
You know, I love that. By the way, if you put that up again, everybody should take a screenshot of that little little chart. It's brilliant. And I think, you know, when you're a smaller company, and I'm seeing it in the chat box, says, hey, we're all in this together. When it's just 6 of you in the International Space Station, you don't have time for the politics. You just got to get the work done. Right. Oh, well, you can't do that. That's the wrong form. When you're a smaller company, you could care less. You know, you just want to get paid, right? You just want to hit payroll. And so I think as we get bigger, we add complexity. And that complexity, you know, common sense goes out the window. You know, it's so funny that I love your book, The Ministry of Common Sense. You know, it reminds me of Monty Python. You know, that you would have to have a ministry of common sense is hilarious. You know, it's like the ministry of redundancy ministry. You know, which I always thought was,
and frankly speaking, it comes down to, I think we need to smile, and that's the reason why we came up with the title, because in the end of the day, in fact, this book was invented by Standard Chartered, which is one of the larger banks in the world. And in fact, there was this wonderful lady in there, her name is Gail, and she actually came up with the name of a Ministry of Common Sense, where they vacuum cleaned one stupidity out of the bank at a time. And I asked her later on, she's British, as you know, Monty Python comes from UK, and I asked her, why did you come up with that idea? She said, listen, humor is the best weapon to make sure things are not becoming too serious and we can start laughing at ourselves. And I think when things become so super serious as it is today with all this screen stuff, we'll lose the humanity, right? And I do actually think you're absolutely right when it comes to entrepreneurial companies. It's all about we are in this together and we had to do the work because no one else will do it.
Yeah. You know, it's you know, there's an expression I love, whether it's you know, just simple things that make sense. Let's do that. Or yes, you should say thank you. You know, you should express gratitude. We always say it's common sense. Unfortunately, it's uncommonly practiced.
Yeah.
And I think that's the brilliance of your book is you look at some policies and companies and you go, well, who thought that was a good idea? Like, did you really think about that before you made that rule? You know, it's interesting. And I think that when you can step back and laugh about it and say, you know, and say, you know, a policy will come up. Like you and I were on that flight from San Diego to New York. And we had DirecTV. You'll love this. DirecTV, and it went offline. And it said, if you're having trouble watching this, call this 800 number. We're like, we're at 30,000 feet. There's no. That's ridiculous. You know. And what did we do? We laughed. I mean, you even took a picture of it with your phone. You said, "Oh, I got to capture that. That's ridiculous."
I did not take a photo with my phone. Did you say that?
Because you don't have a phone. That's right.
You almost ruined my whole reputation here. You and I signed a contract. You would never disclose I have a phone.
Right. And the fact is when you bring it to light and when you give it air, what's the best thing to do about a nonsensical policy or a ridiculous rule that you have is you laugh.
Yeah.
And once the boss laughs, it gives everybody permission to change the rule.
You can hear the the seat belt is unbuckling. You can hear that thing is happening in the room. Now, listen, I'm sure all of you guys watching could feel and hear that with Chester. Chester, where can people find you?
Follow us on LinkedIn. Love to direct you there. We've got a wonderful gratitude journal. We publish it twice a month. Would love you to subscribe to that. I have a little post every morning. I put up a photo of something I'm grateful for. And ChesterElton.com. Go to our website, ChesterElton.com. If you follow us on LinkedIn and go to ChesterElton.com, you'll get more on gratitude and learn more about me than really you probably deserve. So I'm going to warn you up front.
Thank you, Chester. And listen, to all of you guys which were just watching there, I hope that you felt the same energy and the same happiness as I do whenever I talk to Chester. So what an amazing person. With that, I just want to say one simple thing. Common sense is not that common. And as you learn right now, just saying thank you. I mean, it's not that common either, right? All those small things which we take for granted increasingly are disappearing. Let's get them back again. It's time to play the life where smiles are driving things, particular when we're all watching those screens 24/7. Take care and see you very soon. Bye for now.